Well, hey everybody, this is The Reeds. This is Daniel, Katie, and baby Selah, who is officially 36 hours old. We are sitting in the place where she was born. So we wanted to share her birth story with you so that you could hear the wild adventure that is part of our life. And yeah, just kind of chronicle the greatness of God through this story. So here is the story of how baby Selah entered this world on the outside.
So, Tuesday night, get the kids in bed, and some friends came over to bring over some newborn diapers and other things that they knew we'd need after she was born. And around 9 o'clock, I realized I had had a couple of consistent contractions, like worth timing just to see what was going on. So I started timing my contractions, and while we're visiting with our friends, I realized I think this could be the start of something. The contractions were like every 4 to 5 minutes apart, and they were like 30 seconds long. They weren't really painful, but they were definitely contractions. So we're visiting with our friends, but I'm also in the back of my mind like, should I call my mom? I don't want her to come now if this is going to be a false start. I don't want her to sleep on the couch for no reason, but at the same time I don't want to call her at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I'm in labor, come stay with our kids. So I decided, go ahead and call my mom, have her come down. The contractions felt serious enough that I thought, I think this is probably the start of labor.
Your mom got here like 11.
Yeah, so we went upstairs to like rest, and I knew it would be mostly him sleeping, which I was fine with, because the first part of labor, it's not the hard part. So I knew I could lay in bed and rest and just kind of close my eyes and at least rest my body physically, if not actually sleep.
And the best way to labor is like relax.
Yeah.
So at like
that
midnight or 1, I think it was 1 o'clock before we got into bed.
It was actually like 12:50 because I had had a contraction at 1 and I was watching the clock on our dresser because the contraction ended at 1:04 and then my water broke at 1:05. So I remember watching the clock when my water broke and realizing, oh, okay, this is good. This just means I'm actually in labor. So we didn't call my mom for nothing.
I'm like getting ready to drift off, listening to her breathing and like, okay, everything seems cool. We're doing great. And then she goes, oh! And like jolts up, and I'm like, oh, what happened? My water just broke. Oh. Okay.
So I went to the bathroom to get cleaned up from the amniotic fluid, and I didn't want to go back to bed and like, what if more water seeped out, or I didn't want to have to worry about changing sheets or whatever. So I decided to stay in the bathroom and labor for a little bit in there, just to kind of be able to sit on the toilet and not have to deal with fluid everywhere on the carpet. And my plan was to just be in there for like a half an hour or so until I felt like things had stopped draining, and then go back to bed and rest some more, because I knew ultimately rest was the best thing I could do to keep myself relaxed, and then also just be prepared for
maintain energy. Yeah,
for when I had to do the hard work of labor. Neither of us were thinking anything was happening anytime soon. So I thought, if Daniel can be well rested, he'll be a better help to me when the hard labor starts. So I went to the bathroom. He brought me my laptop so I could listen to my worship playlist. And I just said, you go sleep and I'll come get you when I feel like things are starting to get hard. So, so in the bathroom, I was there for about an hour. And at the end of an hour, which was about 2 o'clock, 1:50, I started to feel like I can't do this anymore. Like I'm done, and I quit, and I can't do this. And in my mind, I remembered that that's the last signpost of labor. When you start to feel like you're ready to quit, that's when you're getting ready to transition and be ready to push. But in my head, the timeline was too fast, and my contractions, I was still able to like recover between contractions. So I would have a minute-long contraction, and then I would have a 4-minute break, like where I could gather my thoughts and like wipe my brow and feel like, okay, this is good, we can do this, we're okay. but then the contraction would start and it was really hard, really fast. So I thought, all right, I need help. So I went in to get Daniel. I woke him up and I said, hey, I'm just starting to feel like I can't do this. And then, so he kind of sat up and he's just sitting on the bed, not really doing anything, trying to wake himself up. And another contraction came. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I told you I can't do this. I need your help. And he's just sitting there, like, not helping. And it was like, and then another contraction came without a break. And then a third contraction came without a break. There was like maybe a 10-second break between. And I realized we are in trouble. I have waited too long. Well, I'm standing at our dresser having a contraction and I said, this might be dramatic, but I feel like we're gonna have this baby here. And he said, great response. He said, okay, we can do that if we have to do that. And it was in that moment that I felt like my coach was back, because it felt like, okay, if he thinks we can do that, we can do that. And if he thinks we can do that, then we could probably make it to the hospital. Like, I just felt that sense of like, my team leader was there and I had guidance again. I had been so full of self-doubt in the bathroom because I just wasn't sure how I was progressing. I needed a leader, I needed a coach. And when he made that, like, okay, we can do that kind of comment, I felt like some of my support came back, which was really helpful. Because then I got my dress on, got downstairs to the kitchen, and then the real fun started. So I came downstairs, in my mind I was just thinking, just get yourself to the car. He can do everything else, all you have to do is get to the car. So I got down to the kitchen, and I'm standing at the counter when another contraction came, and the contractions really had not subsided. Like, they were pretty much like a minute long, 10 seconds off, another minute long. So I'm standing at the kitchen counter, and my mom was asleep on our couch so that she could be home when we left to be with our other kids. And as Daniel came down the steps, I said, I'm not getting in the car. We're having this baby here. And at that, I heard her like jump off the couch and just like go mode. What can I do? What can I do? So all I can do is stand at the counter and have contractions. So I'm standing at the counter, and I knew that Selah was crowning. And this is all like, it's like 2:05. So I knew Selah was crowning, but I didn't have the courage to reach down and feel yet, because it just felt so unbelievable that this was actually happening. So on my next contraction, her head, she officially crowned. So I reached my hand down to just to hold her head, just to kind of reassure myself, like, I'm doing something. But the thing that was so amazing was standing up, laboring, delivering, standing up, gravity was working on my side in a major way. So I feel her head crowning, but I'm not really pushing. And at that point, Daniel came next to me and he was reminding me.
You had said, like, my body wants to push. I'm ready to push. And I was like, do not push. Like, wait. And so, yeah, she put her hand down and you said, like she's crowning. And I, like, take a peek. I'm like, yes, yes, she is. I mean, this is internal. I'm not saying this out loud, but, like you can see, like most of the top of her head. And it's like, that's when it was, like, for real, like, we are gonna have this baby here. It's not like we're gonna labor here. We're gonna deliver the baby right here.
So I felt him kneel beside me, or behind me, because I felt his hand like on the back of my knee, which was really helpful because I just knew I wasn't alone, and I also knew he would be able to catch her when the rest of her came out. So that contraction, when her head officially crowned, I just had her head in my hand, and then I knew I had about a minute before the contraction subsided, and then 10 seconds. And then on the next contraction, again, without any real pushing, she just came out. Like, her body just delivered itself almost. My body and her body. I wasn't really trying to push because I didn't want to tear again. I was trying to be really gentle. So all I really remember viscerally in that moment is grunting, "Catcher, catcher," and then this huge gush of baby and fluid. And my job was done. And that was it. It was glorious. So my mom, who at that point, there was nothing for my mom to do other than just pray. So she's standing in this room here praying and blessing Selah and blessing this birth. Maybe 10 seconds passes after Selah's born and my mom goes, "I'm calling 911. Like, if you're not gonna do anything, I'm gonna do something."
So your mom calls the EMS and gives our address and says, "My daughter just had a baby. Here's the address." And the dispatcher on the phone was just so great. Put us on speakerphone, and it was like a 10-minute phone call, and he's just kind of talking us through. All right, let's get mom kneeling down on the ground. Let's get baby between her legs, but up at bottom level, and let's go ahead and like clean off the baby and put a towel over her head, and like just talking us through these things one at a time. Like, okay, we're doing that thing. And he goes, all right, and then we need a piece of string or shoelace or something like that, and we're gonna tie off the umbilical cord at 6 inches. And I'm like, oh.
That's when Daniel chose to start panicking.
I think we have string. Can I use a chip clip? Is like what I wanted to ask him, but I didn't ask him that. I was like, no, you can't use a chip clip for this sort of thing. They use medical chip clips. So I'm checking in our drawer back here, like, it's a junk drawer, maybe we have string. There's no string. "Sir, can I use like a clean shoelace?" He's like, "Go ahead." So I go like my new pair of shoes, and I'm like, "I'm delacing a new pair of shoes, is that okay?" I tie it off, and he's like, "Tie it tight." I'm like, "I'm really tight or just like kind of tight?" And he's like, "Really tight." I'm like, "Okay, really tight." So I tie off the umbilical cord, and right about then, the fire truck pulled down our street. Like, you could hear the siren. Now you can see some red lights. So Connie let them in. We turned the lights on, and they came in to kind of like take over the situation. They clamped the cord, and we cut the cord. They're cleaning off baby and like getting things cozy.
Taking my blood pressure, making sure I'm okay, which I'm like, I'm great. I'm like, this is done. The placenta eventually delivered itself, because that's what placentas do. And actually, so I'm on all fours down on the kitchen floor, and I'm watching these firemen shuffle in, and they were awesome and so great, and I'm so glad for their help. But all I can see is their wet, dirty boots on my freshly mopped kitchen floor. I'm not at all thinking about the mess I just made on my kitchen floor. But hey.
Yeah, towels.
So,
So they took all your vitals.
So they made sure that I was okay, and then I delivered the placenta, so they bagged up the placenta in a Ziploc bag, which was a nice touch, I thought. And then we stood up, and they loaded me onto a stretcher, and off we zipped to the hospital in the ambulance, which was not a very comfortable ride. I realized it was my first time in the back of an ambulance, and they're not built for comfort. So by the time we got to the hospital, again, I was just feeling fantastic. Like, totally the labor was...
We snapped a
5 hours long. Yeah.
You're like totally smiling.
I really felt great. And we're joking with the guy in the back of the ambulance. He was very kind. We get to the hospital, and the nurses at the registration desk are like, "Oh, we've been expecting you, just not like this." So they got us back and got me and Selah cleaned up. I had a 2nd-degree tear, so it is good that we went into the hospital so that the doctor or my midwife could stitch up that tear. But otherwise, everything checked out great. They wouldn't let us go, which was kind of a bummer. We were hoping that they'd let us come home after just a couple of hours in the hospital, but hospital protocol is that you have to stay, the baby has to stay for 24 hours. So we just got home from the hospital. It's been about 36 hours since Selah's birth.
So hopefully this video encourages you, and like maybe it's just entertaining to you to hear this story. Stay tuned. We'll give you more updates of our family and just kind of share that with you. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye.
Talk to you later.